the secrets that they know that will be revealed here, they already know because Robin and Kat are good friends of mine who have been in the world that I've been in for a very long time. So I am Susan Gerbic. I am a longtime partner of Mark Edward. Oh, there you go. I'm
Yep.
spotlighted. How exciting it is for me to stare at myself. And what I do is one of the things that I'm active in the skeptic community is focusing on people that Mark Edward deemed grief vampires. It's a term he invented many years ago, and these are people who tend to prey on vulnerable, desperate people, almost always women. So there's a lot of different worlds in the psychic world that over time I've done a lot of investigations and some stings. And one of the things that I have noticed are you can almost divide it up into different categories. Now, there are those people that you guys know of as psychics, which are the Teresa Caputos, the Thomas John, not Thomas John, um, Tyler Henrys, Teresa Caputo, Sylvia Brown, John Edward, those people you see on television all the time. That's kind of a different animal than what I'm used to dealing with lately, though I have done investigations and research and followed the careers of many of those people that you see on TV. But most of the people you see on the TV shows are heavily edited programs. So they look accurate because the magic is happening in the editing room. That's something Mark Edward used to always say.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of world than what I've started becoming involved in. There's another world that I'm not going to talk about today. It's about those people who are the psychics that you would see on the street corners, have those little shops. And those are the people who tend to prey on, um, start off with like a $5 reading or something like that. And then it becomes, if they can get a hook in you, it becomes the kind where the magic tricks where they bring in an egg and pray over this candle and some of those people are out millions of dollars. And I have a very good friend whose name is Bob Nygaard, Nyaarg, who is a private investigator who has busted many of these psychics and high profile psychics and have received millions of dollars in judgments against them, and some of them are in prison. So that's a different world I don't have anything to do with. That's those ones that take the ojo, they say take your money's cursed, and they pray over your money, take it all out of your bank account, hand it to me. I'll put it in a pillow. I'm going to bury it in the backyard and pray over it for a
Mhm.
while. And then I'm going to give it all back to you. But don't look at the bag when I give you the money back because it's all ends up being newspaper clippings or whatever. And then they leave town. So that's not a world I deal with. But yes, it is a form of fraud. What I worked on mostly in the last couple of years are what I'm starting to call mom and pop psychics. And these are, and when I say psychics, I mean mediums, people who are psychic mediums. And what I have discovered is that in many cases, these are mostly women who are preying on other women. That's the majority of the grift is
Jackie,
on
it
people who
must
are
be
vulnerable. They're people who are
raining.
desperate
Wet
and
outside.
is that you, Wendy? I hear Wendy. Is that
Yeah.
Wendy? Mute yourself, Wendy. I can hear you.
It has
I
to be
know that
quiet.
voice. Let me see.
Okay.
Yeah, it is Wendy. Okay, I thought she was here because I could hear her voice talking to her dog. Or it's my psychic powers. Anyway, oh, I'd like to be able to see you guys. I'm gonna,
Okay, I can put you.
yeah, I like the gallery. If you guys want to look at me, you could pin me if you want to make me big, but I'm staring at myself and I'm just looking at myself and it's
Okay.
weird. But you can pin me if it makes it easier for you to look into my eyes and
Look into my eyes.
um anyway, so I focus mostly lately in the last year or so with mainly people who are those mom and pop type psychics. They're not people that you would have ever heard of before, but what they're doing is they're trying to get a hook into people and they are preying on very vulnerable, mostly women throughout the pandemic, it grew exponentially, and it's a grift that's been going on for a very long time, obviously, but it's gotten worse because of the pandemic. What happened with a lot of people, um, obviously nobody predicted the pandemic. I mean, my gosh, that would have been useful, if we had a psychic kind of like giving us a heads up or something like that about, no, nothing at all. But what happened is during the pandemic, a lot of us were really panicked. We didn't really know what was going on, if you want to remember back a few years ago. And to a lot of people, just like in a war situation, young people, sometimes old people in this case, and all ages were dying. You would take your family member who felt like that, a cold or a flu or something, you didn't really know what was going on. You take them to the hospital, drop them off, and you never saw them again. And it was horrendous. So there was a lot of questions out there. And then a lot of people didn't get full funerals. So the way we tend to grieve as humans is, we have the ceremony and we have this grieving process where you're able to, envelop yourself in the arms of somebody else and cry and shed, out of your orifices and stuff all over each other. But during the pandemic, we weren't really able to do that. So a lot of these people, and in the case of what I'm tended to find, are women who are coming to these psychic mediums who've had loved ones that died during the pandemic, and they weren't able to really grieve in the way that they normally grieved, and they weren't able to have funerals like they used to. And so they feel alone, separated, because in a lot of cases, they weren't able to interact with their children, their grandchildren, their friends and family. There were, businesses were closed, their social networks were closed, churches were closed in a lot of cases. So in the last few years, it's been very, very difficult on people. And so they're gravitating towards these grief vampires that are mostly, a lot of them are online now. And so I'm able to go and attend with my teams of people who we go and we attend these events, and we're able to do investigations. And I've done quite a few, some before the pandemic and some during the pandemic. One of the ones that you guys are all aware of cold reading, obviously, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Wiley's saying yes.
Oh, yeah.
So cold reading is very common in the psychic community, and it is to a person who's in bereavement, who's lonely, who's vulnerable, who's never heard of the term before. Cold reading can look really, really accurate, and it could be very, you can't talk somebody out of it. Most of these people, and I'm talking about from my experience, they're not writing anything down, they're not taking notes, they don't have video when they get a reading with somebody. They're just relying on their memory, and they're so caught up in the emotion of what's happening and they're grieving, and they're motivated. And this is, I call it a motivated sitter, somebody who badly, badly, badly needs this to be real. And so they're just going along with it, and they're caught up in the emotion and the fast talking that's going on, and they can't see the cold reading. It doesn't matter if we explain it. They're not getting it because they need this. It's cathartic to them in a lot of ways.
Okay.
But they're preying on them, and they're bringing it back. And these mom and pop kind of ones, what they're doing is they're trying to get uh they're trying to cause a relationship with the person so that they will come back often, and they will buy their mediumship classes, they will attend their workshops, they will buy their books, and then they become into this community, and it's an engulfing kind of world where everybody is kind of preying on each other after a while. And then what happens is the mediums, these usually women who are home, need a second income, they become mediums themselves, and then they start taking the classes and preyed on to take these classes, and they become mediums and using it. It's like selling Tupperware or something like that. You buy into the classes, so you got all this Tupperware, so you start selling it so you can get a discount on it. And so it's the mediums themselves in this mom and pop world that I'm talking about are actually prey themselves. They're victims. I have one woman, and everything I do is recorded. I always record everything, so everything I say I can back up. But one I had I was watching not so long ago, the woman said a medium told her uh, to go and get, what was it they said? They said, Spirit wants to know why you haven't been coming to the mediumship classes. And she goes, well, I've been really busy and I have these kids and they're in school. She goes, your dad wants you to come back to mediumship classes. And she's like, and dad's dead. Okay. So she's being preyed on using guilt and the spirits and all that kind of stuff. And it's just really cruel. So oh, here comes Crispy. So I've done a lot of these things and I feel kind of weird talking to the mentalist community about it because obviously you guys know the tricks and you should know the harm. But I don't know if you actually, hi Crispy. I don't know if you actually know the actual how 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 bad this is, how harmful it is. And at the magisterium, I did show you a video by a woman, and I've released those videos now. They're all released. It's called Operation Dill Pickle. And it's one of these mom and pop kind of psychics who I had a reading. I sent somebody to get a reading, and we wanted to see what was going on. Now, you guys know the term hot reading, obviously, right? Okay. Most psychics don't hot read. Most don't. So when you catch a psychic hot reading, it is obvious that they know that they're defrauding because you have to go look it up. But what's going on in these mom and pop kind of psychics is that they're hot reading and they don't realize that it's hot reading. Because what happens is they've built up a relationship with the person and they have readings with them over and over. So what they're doing is they're just repeating information they already knew. And so that was one of the examples I showed at the magisterium, is Trudy. It was a woman who was at the end of the reading, we find out that she says, I'll see you tomorrow, Trudy. And she's like, yeah, I'll be at class tomorrow. And it's because she's coming back to this medium more than once. And
Right.
when you do that, that's a form of hot reading. And it just seems like it's obvious when you think about it. But if you talk to anybody in the psychic world who works in the psychic world, they're like, well, you had good success with them. So of course you're going to go back to the same psychic. But they already know who you are. Even if they don't remember you, like exactly,
Mhm.
they sometimes somewhere down the line, as you're talking to them, you say, that does seem familiar. I think I do remember. This is the one that had the brother that died in the fire. I remember now. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting something about a fire. And there was a young male and it was really horrendous. And then that's hot reading. So Andrew, I
Good.
kind of was hoping that maybe you would guide me through what it is that people, and maybe with questions people had, because I mean, I could really, this is
Sure,
something I've
sure.
thought about, and I have no idea where you guys want to go, but I'm happy to answer lots and lots of questions and maybe, and if you want to get the disclaimer conversation out of the way, I don't know if people are interested in the idea of disclaimers versus.
Dan, it's like, no disclaimers. We actually had a small discussion before we started.
Okay.
And
Were you
uh,
talking about me? I didn't hear. I didn't.
yeah, they're ringing in the
My
ear.
nose was itching, and
Right.
that's how I knew.
So I think everybody is interested in something similar to what I'm interested in, is the damage that occurs when you forget your ethics. So if you pray after someone and you convince someone to give you your account, all of your accounts, or sell their house to pay your fees to the psychic, um, that's to me, there's no bigger crime.
It's pretty obvious, right?
Yes, a big so you once that happens, it seems like on paper it seems like a very moderate crime. A police officer to say, well, you were dumb enough to do that in the first place, so there's nothing we can do. However, tomorrow begins the next domino. You don't have any money, so you can't eat. Now you can't pay your bills. You got no place to stay. So a month from now, you're not going to exist because you have no way to support yourself. You know, so I see that happening, and to me, there's no bigger crime. And if it's worse, if you still need advice, you don't have any money, you might actually go out and steal money to pay the psychic. So I
Okay,
don't know
so
if that's actually happened.
all right, so that's more of the Bob Nygaard kind of thing where they latch onto these people and they milk them for millions. I mean, and I'm serious. There was one woman, and these are all documented cases. You can find them. One was a woman who was in college. She was trying to get her medical degree, and the psychic talked her out of getting her medical degree and becoming a stripper because she was able to make cash. And that way she was able to give more money back to the psychic. And those are the type of people I don't deal with because that's just a different, that's fraud. It's actually fraud, and it's something that the police and district attorneys and so on can take and charge somebody and put them in prison, and they have. But what I'm dealing with, and I don't want you guys to think that there isn't harm. The harm that's going on in the world that I see has nothing really to do with money. It's people's emotions they're manipulating, as well as they're messing with the memory of the person that they have. And they're rewriting our memories because we all know, your memory is not like a cassette tape, remember those, or a VHS tape where you put it in the machine and it always plays the same thing, Bambi's always shot, and and the Grinch always steals Christmas, and then it comes out at the end, and no, it's not like that. As we have our memory, and if somebody comes in and starts messing with our memory, then it rewrites it. This is something Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller used to talk about, is that these people are, that's one of the worst things these people do, is they mess with the memory of your loved one. And as performers, I guess that's just something to be aware of, is that if you even give off some kind of glib thing that is, I know you guys wouldn't do any of this kind of stuff. I mean, if you want to talk to the dead and claim to talk to the dead, that's fine. I mean, it's part of the act. It's part of the art form of mentalism. And but what the psychics do is they try to there some of these psychics really, some of these mediums really believe they're helping people. They really do. They're not in it for the grift. They're in it for power. They're in it for because they're lonely and they want to give advice to people. This woman I've just investigated in Operation Dill Pickle. I was hoping the article would be out today. It'll probably be out tomorrow. It'll probably be out. Oh gosh, this is maybe tomorrow or Monday. But and I'll share it with you, Andrew, and you could share it with the group. It's Operation Dill Pickle. It's the investigation I just did.
Right.
But I think in this case, this woman who is the medium I investigate, she's got tons of money. She's written 50 books on spiritualism. She owns limousine companies in New York, Los Angeles, and Vegas. She doesn't need money. She's doing this, I think, because her kids are all grown and nobody listens to her anymore, and she just wants to tell people, what to do with their lives. And doing that is a form of power. And it's fine if we came on together and I asked for advice from you guys as people and friends, or even strangers, and if I said, I'm just having this problem with my brother and he's really been bugging me about this thing, and you could give me advice, and that's peer-to-peer advice. It's no different. These others, the mom and pop psychics that I'm dealing with, they're just giving advice that somebody else would give as well. The problem is the argument from authority. They're not a peer. They're this person who's communicating with your dead loved ones.
Yeah.
So that's really what's coming down to, is they're not on the same level to these women who are getting the readings, and it's quite cruel. So so it's not so much money, which some people getting readings for 50 bucks or $100, and that can, to some people, $100 or $50 is a lot of money. But it's really not about the money so much as the emotion and the manipulations, the emotional manipulations. Plus,
Yeah.
they're giving them health and legal advice and financial advice.
Okay.
And what's missing is some people will say, like Mark Edward, my dear partner, Mark Edward, when we went and did Operation Pizza Roll in 2017, the part Mark played was a man who was worried about his heart. He had he was pretending that he had heart problems, and the psychic referred to his heart problems and said, it looks like you're going to be okay, get the test. The doctor says get the test. But what we didn't know at the time was that Mark had the beginning of prostate cancer. So if so when you go to a psychic and you say to the psychic, I've got this problem or whatever, and the psychic says, you should get that cough checked out, or you should get this done, or yeah, go and see the doctor. What's the big deal? And then they'll say later, see, I told him to see the doctor. But what happens to the person who's getting the reading is it says, the psychic didn't see anything really wrong. So, I'll cancel my appointment next week. I guess I could put it off until after the holidays. Why do I need to go now? The psychic didn't, the psychic didn't seem worried at all. And they're psychic, so of course they know. And what happens is people put this stuff off, and then that's harm.
Yeah, it's harmful. All right.
Wiley has a question,
Yeah, Wiley has.
or he's just waving at me or something. I don't know. Hey, high five.
Susan, I think one of the biggest dangers that from what you're saying is when you cross over from performance to social engineering. And that's where the danger comes in, where you're actually grooming somebody to buy something, follow you, whatever, right? You're making that person totally dependent on you, which is completely illegal. There's a bunch of names for it, of course, grooming, social engineering. There's a bunch of those. And I wouldn't see anybody in our group grooming somebody. This is not who we are, but
right.
But that's just one of the security things. I'm deep into security. You'll see my tag in the group.
Yeah,
I'm really deep into personal security, making sure that nobody's getting ripped off or scammed or engineered or any of that kind of crap. So
I'm glad you raised that, Wiley, because one of the things I want to make sure, I'm not a mentalist, but I've been in the community. I know what's going on. I've been involved in the community for a very long time as far as the mentalism as well. So what I want the mentalist community to understand is that you guys are kind of on the front lines of this. When you are performing as a mentalist, which takes on a lot of times the role of a psychic or a medium in seance, which I absolutely adore seance, by the way. It's my favorite form of magic is mentalism, and the seance is so much fun. But you are likely to have conversations with people after the event where obviously, I don't care how many disclaimers you're going to give, people are going to come over to you and they're going to tell you stories, and they're going to want to know, I know it's really, you're doing it, and so I'm hoping that if I leave you with anything is that this idea that come up with some conversation with yourself. How are you going to handle it when somebody comes up to you later and they tell you the story about themselves and a psychic or whatever, and it's clear that they are in a position where they're being manipulated, and in a position where somebody has a hook in them or about to get a hook in them, and you have to kind of break character enough to be able to have that conversation with them and say, I don't know, however you want to do it. This is up to you guys, but I think you should prepare yourself for situations where you're going to need to pull people aside and say, look, I am like an actor playing a part. I just did tricks, and I know it looks impossible, and I know it looks amazing, but I need you to understand that nobody has this ability. Nobody has ever found a missing person.
That was before.
Not happening. What, Adrian?
Oh, sorry.
All right, you guys, get on mute. Come on, man.
Yeah,
So
that's a really good point you have there, because even if it's just one person after your show that comes up, you've basically saved this one person or opened the doors, because
Just have a conversation with them, you guys. And it's you may have to pull them aside because Mark didn't like to break character. But we did a show for Weird or What. It was a TV show that was done by William Shatner, and it was called the Skull Seance. Which is a seance that happened in the UK, 1990s, 1980s. And it is just a seance. You guys know how it's done. They had like a film canister and they put it on the table in a box
Yeah.
and they locked up the box.
yeah.
The skull. Anyway, so the TV show was focused on the skull. It's named for a place in the UK, and I'm saying it wrong. But Mark Edward and I did a couple seances for them. And it was so much fun. Oh my God, it was fun. And so we were showing how you could do a seance, and they filmed it, and it was great.
Mhm.
But after the fact, now you guys know this. I know you know this because I know things you didn't even plan are the things that sometimes happen, these odd things. And that's the great thing about mentalism. Like we had this, we did the film shoot in this giant warehouse. And after the fact, a spider came down from the rafters and it landed in the table where the people were. And they freaked out when we finally got the lights back on. And then Mark had used a candle. And then he blew out the candle. And then we went into blackness, dark seance. And you couldn't see your hand in front of no, it was like nothing. There's nothing there. But when the lights went back on, somebody saw a face in the wax of the candle. And there was nothing you could do to prove, to explain to them that it's just a candle wax. And
It's just a
I
candle.
guess it kind of looks like a face. And human beings are made to see faces and things.
Yeah.
But what
Well,
happened is
That's called pareidoidal.
pareidolia. But what Mark had to do is he had to break character to this one woman who's terrified of spiders, and I guess had had dreams about spiders and everything else. He had to break character because he came out of the seance laying on the table out. They had to shake him to wake him up. And then he just got up and wandered off. He never said anything to the people, and they're just sitting there at the seance table. And then the film crews we told them to say nothing. And so they're just standing there and people are looking at each other like, well, what the hell just happened? And that's when they're starting to see these things happen. Like Mark took a bell out of a box, and there was straw in the box. As he took it out, some of the straw had fallen on the table, and the people didn't remember there was straw in the box. So they thought the straw had manifested itself during the seance. I kid you not. And so Mark finally had to find that woman who was freaking out about the spiders. He had to go and talk to her and have a discussion with her because she was crying and terrified. And she's like, I'm leaving my house. I'm done. I'm out of this place. But so that's what I'm saying to you guys.
Yeah.
Figure out how you're going to have this conversation. It might only happen once in a while to you, but there are people out there, mostly women, who are falling prey to these grief vampires and these mom and pop type people who maybe think they're doing good.
Right.
And Banachek told me a long time ago, or I can't remember, he told me, or it was something I heard him say. He says, the default they fall back on is I'm helping these people. And it's like, that's bullshit. Banachek says, I could give you the drug of your choice and you'll feel good. But is it helping you to give you drugs, And it's true, because what's going on in the world of that I'm in, and I've talked to grief counselors and grief therapists, licensed grief people who deal with this, is when you're going through grief, you have to be aware that there are people out there who want to manipulate you, and they will if you allow them to. And so what these psychics are doing is they're trying to keep you stuck. They want you to not move on. They want you to not get rid of the clothes. They want you to not get rid of the shoes under the bed, or his hat, or his guitar, They don't want you to move your location. They don't want you to do anything. They want you to remain stuck, because the longer you're stuck, the more likely you're going to continue relying on their readings. Whereas a licensed grief counselor, from what I understand, they have like a limited amount of time they want you to go through counseling, and they try to evaluate each person, and they decide, okay, this is probably what's going to work for this person, or this is going to work for that person. And what they're trying to do is teach you, the person who's in grief, how to get through how to see when you're starting to fall into those uh the dangers areas, when you're starting to they want you to learn how to deal with that grief, how to feel like you're to move on. Because that's another thing, is the psychics will do is they'll say, oh, he's watching over you.
Oh,
He's there with you. He was your soulmate. He loves you so much. He's there. The lights flickering in your house, that's him. Oh, when you see a penny on the ground, pick it up. That is a message from him. And he's sending you birds and all kinds of signs, and there's music and all this bullshit. But what they're doing is that keeps you stuck. It keeps you coming back to the medium. And what it does is it does not allow the person to move on in their lives, because it's very difficult to have a new relationship with somebody when you're constantly, you can't sell your house, you can't get the clothes out of the house, you've got his shoes under the bed. How are you going to have more relationships, or if that's a constant reminder? And this one that Operation Dill Pickle, the psychic tells the woman, I'm getting a chair that's spinning in the house. Is there a chair in the house that spins? I mean, you guys are all probably sitting in a chair that spins, right? So she's sitting there talking about how there's a chair in the house that spins. I'm in one. And then she says, is there a chair? And the woman says, yeah, there's some bar stools in their dining in the kitchen area, and they spin. And she says, yeah, because he's talking about the spinning chair. And I think your son sits in one of them, because she already figured out she had a son. He spins in the chair. He's like 14. So of course he's spinning in the chair, right? So he's spinning in the chair, and she goes, yeah, yeah. And she said, yeah, because he's with you when you're there. That's a reminder of him. And she goes, and she said something about a flag, and and because she'd found out he was in the military. So when you're in the military and you die, a lot of times you get that triangle flag and it's folded. So of course you're hanging on to it, right? Somebody's hanging on to it. The widow probably does. She says, yeah, I put that flag in the chair, in one of those bar stool chairs. So that must be what you're talking about. That's his chair. And it's like, oh, so you got a perfectly good chair in your dining area in your kitchen, and nobody's allowed to sit in it except this flag, right? I mean, think about it. How do you move on? You decide you're starting to date, and you're like, oh, sorry, I can't. Don't sit there. That's that's my ex-husband's chair. You mean your ex-husband? You mean the man who's dead? Yeah, yeah, but you can't sit there because he's watching us right now.
oh God.
She can't move on. She can't sell her furniture. She can't even move the damn flag out of the chair,
Oh,
because that's what's going on. And with Trudy, the reading I showed you guys at the magisterium, her husband is sitting at the kitchen table having a hot fudge sundae right now. I mean, how can that person get on with her life if she thinks he's right there, and
yeah.
she's going to go sit down at the table and have ice cream with him? It's just cruel.
Well,
Anyway.
now, Susan, I
Mhm.
wanted to bring something up that when you were talking earlier about health advice,
Mhm.
because it reminded me of something. God, it's been years, but there was one time where Andrew and I were double booked for, um, he was doing clarimancy readings and I do pendulum readings. And he got booked, and then we had someone come in last minute and say, hey, I was talking to you earlier. Could someone come out and do readings for my Halloween party? And I was like, oh, well, Andrew's booked, but I can come out and do pendulum readings. And of course, everyone was drinking, and it was a late
Much
night.
easier.
But I was doing pendulum readings, and I had a woman come in, and I hadn't. I think this was actually one of the first handful of times I had ever done any readings at all. And she was asking me a health question. And I was really like very, I kind of spun it where, well, the pendulum's, the nutshell version is the pendulum's telling you talk to your doctor and find out what your doctor says. And that's what the pendulum is telling you. And I was, Andrew, you might remember this, but I was talking to Terry Tyson about it. And I was just like, I was so out of my depth and so like terrified of giving. I seriously can't give advice on this, and I don't want to give advice. I don't even want to give the
Right.
illusion that I'm giving advice on this.
Mhm.
And Terry was basically like, yes, that's what you do with health is you take them right back to the doctor and you stay right out of that because you are out of your depth if you're an honest person.
Well, Mark used to say, I don't do legal, health, or financial. He would spot out right off and say that. But what's going on is, again, like I said, when you say what's missing, because if a person says, well, I'm not seeing any health issues with you right now, but maybe you should check out a doctor, the person who's motivated who really doesn't want to go to the doctor and have that heart murmur or whatever checked out, they say, oh, the psychic said everything was fine. I know they said go to the doctor, but so and Mark used to use the pendulum too, or whatever device he was using. He had people ask if my spouse was cheating on me or whatever, and he would hand the thing to him and say, if you have to ask that question, here's the pendulum, let the pendulum decide. And that way he'd be able to blow it off and say, no, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. Don't beat me up. But so the health
Yeah,
thing.
those are dangerous,
Oh
dangerous
yeah,
grounds.
but so that's when you fall back, hopefully, on your disclaimers, is that if you can wedge in there, you can book me for your bar mitzvah, or you can book me for balloon animals or whatever like that, somehow to deflate it that I am just acting. I'm not really doing readings, but it's what's happening in these mom and pop readings. There are 10 people or 50 people or 5 people in these readings or one-on-one.
Mhm.
All that disclaimer stuff, all that for entertainment purposes only is nonsense. These people are full on giving financial,
Oh yeah.
medical, and I've not really seen any legal advice, but it's right out there because they think they're no skeptic. I mean, what idiot like somebody like would be paying to go see a psychic for a skeptic like me? I mean, my gosh, nobody would do that. They don't know me very well. I pay top dollar when I go to these things. I just got back from Matt Frazier. He's you guys probably haven't heard of him, Meet the Fraziers. But when I was in Vegas, for the big skeptic conference this year, the rest of the conference went to go see Neil deGrasse Tyson doing a nice talk. I went down to see this Greek vampire, and I paid for VIP passes, and I got front seat, right, staring right at him, and he knows who I am. I went in so that I could meet and greet with him beforehand as Susan Gerbic. And I went right up to him and said, hey, Matt Frazier, he says, I said, you don't know who I am, do you? And he goes, no. And this is at the meet and greet before everything. I mean, we're just going, and I'm paid the top dollar to be able to go and have this, couple minutes reading with him. I mean, meeting with him. And I said, it's Susan Gerbic, from the New York Times, Operation Peach Pit. It was in the New York Times Magazine. He knows damn well who I am because that's the reason he has a Wikipedia article, is because of the New York Times article where we caught him. And so he's like, oh,
Oops.
and he was really off his game. And so then when we took pictures together, and I told him, we'll be here tomorrow to see you. We're really looking forward to it. And we've been watching your career and everything. And he's like, oh. And so I go sit down, and I'm sitting in the audience waiting while he's meeting and greeting everybody else. And I'm staring him down
Oh no.
like this.
Wow.
And I made him so uncomfortable. There's an article I'll give you, Adrian or or Wendy or somebody, could you please put the article, or Kat, I know will do it. Could you put the latest Skeptical Inquirer that had the Matt Fraser one in the chat here so people can have it? I appreciate it. Thank you, Kat. So what they do is I knocked him off his game just by being there, but I paid $260, which was the most I could pay. And I showed up really early, and I missed Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Right.
And I went to go see him just to troll him. Oh, and my last name was on my jacket in the back, about this big, Gerbic. And I used my email, Susan Gerbic, to buy the ticket. I used my Visa card to buy the ticket. I wanted him to know I was going, and this guy didn't hot read me, but it really shook him up. And I know he thought I was there from the New York Times, because throughout the show, and while I'm waiting, when he's backstage, because I know he's watching, he's at the Venetian, the quick camera is watching. So I sat there like this, going like this to people who are walking in, and kind of like coyly going, and I sat there with my notebook, bright red notebook, taking notes, so he could see me taking notes with my bright red notebook. I sat there and I didn't applaud or laugh or anything. I was just like
writing, yeah.
And I just stared at him, and it must have been so uncomfortable. And the next night was when Banachek did his thing at the conference, and I went to that. But Matt Fraser didn't know if I was in the audience or not, or somebody else was in the audience, because I told him we will be here tomorrow, because it was only a 2-night show he's doing in Vegas. And when the whole show was over on the Friday night that I was there, I stood up and I stretched and I made a few more notes, and I waited for the place kind of clearing out. And I went and looked behind me and stuff, and he's off stage. Matt Fraser's off the stage, and I'm just like, like laughing and like talking. There's people picking up their purses and gathering up. I'm like, yeah, all right, we did it. Meet you outside, talking to people. I was there by myself, but Matt Fraser doesn't know that. He's not psychic. So I was just went to knock him off his game. That's the only reason why I did it. I did it to troll him, because he is not psychic. He knows his biggest detractor, the person who put him into the New York Times, is there. And why in the hell would she be here? Using her full name, paying the full price, walking up to him right before the show starts and says, I am Susan Gerbic. How do you not know who I am? I'm here to watch you. We are here to watch you. We will be here tomorrow.
Wow.
And his mind was going,
yeah.
Great. Anyway, so Kat probably has it.
She did. She shared it in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Kat. So that's the article
share
about
it with everyone because the recording's on.
Okay.
It only lets me share it with the host, but
okay,
it's
so
in
Anthony
there.
will have to share
Okay.
it. So,
yeah, I'll copy it and put it into the post when I post this.
but that's one of the most recent things I did, and I did it because Mark Edward had died in August. He died at International Psychics Day, by the way. So August 4th. I thought that was quite funny.
That's good.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. And so he loved this kind of stuff. And to Mark, it was a performance that he knows that psychics are performers. These people who did this, they're just performers, like a comedian would be, or an actor. If you rile them, especially before the event, with something like this, it just knocks their performance off. I'm not the confrontational type that would do that. I'm more of like staying quiet in the back and recording everything and then releasing it later. Because like when we did Operation Pizza Roll, the one that made the New York Times, one of the ones that made the New York Times, there was 2 in the New York Times, and we stayed in character the whole time. And then when we went, we paid for VIP passes again. It was like $160 a person, and Mark and I both went. After the fact, we hung around and talked to some of the other sitters, and we got to the VIP room, which was only 20 of us. And that's where the psychic, his name is Thomas John, he revealed that he had stooge in the audience. He outed his own stooge in the VIP room.
Oh, man.
And we're like, oh my God. And then I snuck a picture, and we found out who his stooge was, and she's who she is, and so on. I know who that is. I've written about her multiple times, but so I'm the type that wants to stay in character so that you never know what might happen, might occur. And then when we went to go see Thomas John in Vegas, he had a show up until COVID canceled the show. He was putting out posts on Facebook saying, make sure you come to my show in July 2020. Tickets are now available. He
Yeah.
didn't see that the whole thing in Vegas pretty much was canceled, right?
Yeah.
And all the shows were closed. But no, he didn't see that coming. But I sent in some people from my team that would go and record the shows and sit in there and watch what was going on. And they mingled with the people who got readings. And there was this one woman who got a reading, and it was so specific. She had, the psychic had seen that she had like a deck of cards in her purse. And she's like, yes, I do. And she pulls it out and she's waving around. They're my dad's, and people in the audience don't know any better. So after the event, my person went and was hanging out and talking to her. And it turns out she shows up to a lot of his shows. When he sees her in the audience, he knows that she always carries this deck of cards. And her friends were standing there and they're like, how come you always get the reading? It's always you. And she's like, I don't know. I guess my dead family members want to come through and not that your families don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So even these stooges don't know they're stooges. They're unwilling stooges. She just thinks her family only wants to talk to her.
Oh my God.
So it's common. So but those are hot reading psychics, which most, like I said, the bigger name ones, the Tyler Henrys, the Teresa Caputas, and so on, they hot read. They will if they have to, or if they're given an opportunity to. But the mom and pop type, the ones that I'm dealing with, you don't necessarily see them hot reading, except just the familiarity of it.
Yeah. So there's been like this unspoken rule, especially for our group here, is that when you're doing like a seance, that you do not contact a person's loved one. It's very general. So if there's anybody here, make a sound, that kind of thing. We would never say that, or some might, I don't know, but they would never go after someone's loved one when he passed away.
Mark did a seance before I knew him for Sharon Tate. You guys remember her?
Okay, let's hear this.
Oh my God. He went to this part of LA and he said that he was doing a series of seances for famous people. Jimi Hendrix was one. He always did Houdini. That was his thing, but he did one for Sharon Tate, and Sharon Tate's best friend showed up. And there was all these people, they really believed it was going to be a real seance. And they were all goth and, ready for it. And he said it was the freakiest thing he ever did. And he says, I thought I was going to get beat up. It was so scary. And so, he says, I'm not doing that again, anything like that. I don't do seances for anybody who would have anybody in the room that would be, unless it was really clear. I'm just pretending,
Yeah.
But he did, yeah, we did a bunch of different ones, but the Sharon Tate one was something else. Oh, I don't know if you want to hear a story that's involves automatic writing and something, but do you know the Stefanos, Marilyn and Joseph Stefano, who wrote I think he wrote the screenplay for Psycho, and he wrote a lot of the Outer Limits stuff. His name is Joseph Stefano. And he was a friend of Mark Edwards, and this is before I knew him. And they lived like
I
next
know.
door.
I'm like,
You know the
I was
story?
trying to hit the
Of
unmute,
course,
like
of
I
course you
totally
do.
know who you're talking about.
Okay, so they lived almost next door to the house where the murders were happening, the helter skelter stuff. And Joseph Stefano died, but Marilyn Stefano, his wife, lovely woman, I met her once. She used to tell this story about how they did automatic writing, just goofing around, and Abigail came through. The name Abigail came through, and that's one of the people who died in the helter skelter Charles Manson murders.
Abigail Folger.
Yeah, Albergo Folgers. Thank you. God, these Susans are so sharp, you know.
See?
And so she so the story that Marilyn was telling to everybody is that we did the seance after, and that all this happened, and that, you know, we were in contact with Abigail Folger and these things. And then I started saying to myself, no, I don't think any of that happened. And then when we talked to Marilyn again, because Mark was telling, you know, it's telephone. Somebody tells a story to the next person, tells a story, who tells a story. And because we're humans and we like to embellish our stories and make them sound really interesting so we can be the focus of the attention, the stories get a little bit, you know. So it turns out that once we started talking to Marilyn and asked her about it, the story was, well, yeah, it kind of looked like an A on the automatic writing we did. And it wasn't, you know, it was, well, I guess you had to turn it this way. And we just kind of, you know, so the story broke down once you start actually asking serious questions about it. But that's how it works, is that, and you got in the mentalism business, it absolutely works that way. But in the psychic business where these people are giving readings, this is their bread and butter. Is there People forget the hits. I mean, forget the misses and remember the hits. That's what it's all about. And because they're so motivated, they're so want this to be real, they're willing to overlook just whatever it takes.
You're right. You're using all of the verbiage that mentalists use, all the hits and stuff.
Uh,
I love that. But
I've been around.
oh God, I mean, you started this with James Randi, correct?
So James Randi was a friend of Mark's, and he became a friend of mine later on in life. And yes, Mark, he wrote the foreword to Mark's book, Psychic Blues: Confessions of a Conflicted Medium, because Mark absolutely loved the world of giving readings. He adored it.
Yeah.
And so he could see the power of it. And Susan probably knows this, and maybe if you guys know the story of Nightmare Alley, and that was a leading influence on Mark's life, is that you start to believe your own bullshit after a while. You get enough people who endorse you and tell you how there's no way you could possibly know this, and you are just the most amazing. And I think that kind of happens to some of these mediums that I deal with, is they start to think that, you know, I'm helping people. People are crying and they're obviously um, really, you know, getting some kind of benefit from it.
Yeah.
I have a good friend in New Zealand. She was just messing with this guy who he had I guess he was going to go see a psychic, and she says, I could do that for you. It's no big deal. Let me show you how it's done. Here, give me equivalent to a quarter in New Zealand. And he gave it to her, and she closed her eyes, and she just started giving him some random nonsense about some dead family member, and she opened her eyes and he was crying. And she's like, I was just kidding. He's like, no, man. She says, no, I'm just kidding. He goes, no, you're mm-mm.
You got to
And
get.
that kind of ruined their friendship, because she was like, no, I just was making stuff up. That was just general stuff. And he says, no, don't make fun of me like that. You were really in contact with my dad, and I know it. And he's
Wow.
bawling. And so, you know, it's dangerous stuff, you guys.
The truth ruins her friendship.
Yeah, it did absolutely ruin their friendship, because he was very vulnerable in that moment, and it's quite embarrassing. So, you know, it's
I can see how the struggle for you for doing this is really tough.
well, it's hard. It takes a toll on you in a lot of ways, because like when I saw the Matt Frazier event, I left, I walked back to my casino, which was the Horseshoe. And as I was walking back, I was just really hurt, because I'm sitting in this audience. I'd spent 3 hours, you know, going to the VIP event earlier and sitting in the audience completely alone. And I know that, you know, this is something Mark Edward would want me to do. And I don't believe in spirits, obviously, but it did feel very emotional to me to be doing this by myself, because Mark would have really have been all over doing it with me. And I was the only one at that event alone. Everybody was with somebody, and there was probably 6 women to every man, and the men were there with a wife or woman. You know, there was almost no men there. And as I'm watching this and people are crying all over the audience, and I'm thinking, this is just some of the worst cold reading I've ever seen. It's just awful. And I'm sitting there stoic. I'm not laughing, I'm not crying, but other people around me are just so emotional over it. And the people sitting next to me, I can't figure out, they're like looking at me like, why is she just sitting there with this notepad in her lap, just staring at him? Why is she, I know I didn't say anything to him. I
Yeah.
just stayed, stoic, but it felt horrible to know that there's a whole room full of people who are just being manipulated in this way. I mean, the things he's telling them, the psychics belittle sitters. Now, I hope nobody in this room is one of those magicians that have still hung on to those. What was it? Daniel was talking, your friend Daniel, Andrew was talking about those those lines you guys have used that are just so derogatory but you just use them. Mark took a lot of work for him to get rid of as many as he could, but it's you're men. You're almost all men. And then you pull up these women on the stage, and it's just a manipulation of the woman. Trust me, I know. I've sat through a zillion magic and mentalism events, and I've seen some of this going on.
Oh, yeah.
But these psychics that get up there, they're doing the same damn thing. If the woman doesn't, like, he's calling on a woman in the audience, and he says, "I'm getting the name John," and she's like, "I don't think there's a John." He goes, "There's no John, Johnny, Jonathan, Jonathan, blah 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 blah, Janie,
Yeah.
James, blah, blah."
There.
She goes, "Oh yeah, there was a boy that lived across the street. His name is Johnny." He's like, "Come on, man, keep up," So they're belittling them
Yeah.
because they're trying to keep their hold the audience. But instance after instance after instance,
Mhm.
they're there manipulating, usually a woman, and using them for their own to hide the failure that they just got. And I've seen this tons of times.
Yeah.
And I know that magicians and mentalists can do this also. Maybe you should have Andrew for the magisterium this year. You should have like a big pot of like a cauldron or something with ice, like, and everybody has to come up and write on a piece of paper the one that they want to get rid of, the trope that they always say, and they can put it in the thing, and the ice can come and try to
Yeah.
because you have to unlearn these, because you start out in your careers. You guys have probably all been doing this decades. You
Right.
start off, and it becomes just something you say. Mark used to always say, he'd say, "Can I?" He says, "Show me, give me your right hand," and or whatever, and they'd
Right.
hand their hand to him, and he goes, "No, the clean
clean
hand
one.
this time." And
Exactly.
it was like, oh my God. And people would laugh, but they're laughing.
And the favorite, oh, it was the clean one.
Oh, yes. And they're
We're-
laughing at the person who you've pulled up on stage. And that's just like you're putting them down, you're putting in their place. I don't know if it makes them more complacent to be able to be manipulated whenever you do whatever it is you're doing, but it's not okay. People in the audience who are clued in are going, that wasn't cool.
So the majority of the psychics that you've encountered,
Mhm.
Are they all men?
No. A lot are men. They are, it's kind of equal, but it's pretty much the sitters are almost always female,
Okay.
but the no, I'm seeing the mom and pop ones that we're seeing that
Yeah.
I'm dealing with are almost all women, because they're those people who got the workshops and they continue doing the workshops.
Mhm.
And the lady Phyllis, that's the one in Operation Dill Pickle that I just was talking about. She's written books on spiritualism for years, and then her husband died. And then she's using him as her channel or whatever it is. I don't know. She's just making up shit. I don't know what it is she's doing, but she's saying she in her advertisements. Oh, her website says for entertainment purposes only.
Of course.
So I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, every time. So I recorded 10 readings. One is me, one is somebody I sent, and then 8 other women. And I've released all of the videos on my YouTube channel, which is Psychics Explained. There's 11 hours of viewing pleasure. And it's got the video of them doing the reading full. And then it's got me doing commentary. And then it's the reading and then commentary and so on. And oh my God. I would ask, and each time I'm evaluating, I'm like, okay, so this is for entertainment purposes only, according to website.
Right.
Was there anything in this at all entertaining? And it's like, there's no entertainment. She just puts it on as a disclaimer to keep people from suing her, I guess. I don't know, but it's extremely harmful. There's
Well,
no entertainment in, and these people are not being helped. Even though, that's a question to think about. If a person pays to get a reading and thinks they got help, is that okay? Even if they're being manipulated and lied to? Because that's what's coming out. They leave, they feel better, they had a good cry. They think they got talked to.
yeah.
But is that ethical? Knowing that you lied to them? I mean, you guys I'm not talking about you. I'm
Right.
talking about the royal you. Those grief vampires.
Those that do the most damage is
Right.
they're deserving of this kind of thing.
But no, of course, the mentalism community, you guys know. And when I go to the magisterium, I understand that what you guys are talking about and what you're doing is yeah, you like to do ghost walks and seances and all that. That's cool. I love that stuff, and I think that's important. I think it's a part of our history. It's an art form. It's beautiful when it's done well.
But it's done well, exactly.
When it's done well, but
like when we do it, yeah.
but whenever it's after, if somebody does leave your event and they're like, no, I know you're real. Oh, Mark had a guy almost die at the seance at the Magic Castle. I don't know if you guys heard that story. I think he told it in 2023. Did he tell you the story of how the man, he's at the Magic Castle and he's doing a seance in the Houdini seance room, and the guy,
No,
Mark comes out, you come out, they have a dinner, and he comes out and there's a guy laying on the floor, and they're like, he's like, what's going on? And they're like, oh no, it's okay. He's like, no, that's not okay. And he goes, well, it's just his heart. It's all right. And he's like, no, that's not okay. So they called the paramedics, and they had to take him down the stairs. Boom, bitty, boom, bitty, boom, bitty, boom. The stretcher, they brought him down the stairs and they got him out. And Mark's like, aren't you guys going to the hospital with him? They're like, no, it's all right.
Yeah.
He does this all the time. It's okay. No, we're here we paid for this. Paid. And Mark said, he was tempted to bring the guy forward through the seance, and oh, Joe's here. He's but oh my God. I wasn't there for that one. That was before my time, but I can't even imagine. He said it was the best. He said everybody's like, what's going on in the seance room up there? He said it was great advertisement for him, because everybody's like, man, there's something seriously going on in that seance room.
Nice.
He never did find out if the guy lived or died.
Oh. All right. Should we open this up to some questions before we?
Why don't you guys put your little handsies up, on Zoom?
Put your hands up,
And that way, don't rush me all at the same time. Then this little hand will go up, and then you'll move to the top of the screen, and I'll make some shit up for you whenever you ask me questions.
Nice.
I can say shit on this, right? It's okay. You guys are all adults.
We're all adults here.
Yep. We've heard worse.
Okay, well, go ahead. Nobody's asking me questions.
Well,
the hand thing is working.
I taught high school for a long time, and one of the reasons I quit teaching high school, you guys kind of make fun of me for this cynical comment that I use all the time. Anything you say with sufficient authority is true. And I started looking around as objectively as possible at my students, and they were becoming like little clones of me. And I don't know if my influences are good or bad, but I'm incapable of handling that. And that's another of the many reasons I stopped teaching high school.
Look at Michael. Look, Mike. Look at, I got Michael. There's a little chicken right there.
Yeah, chicken.
He's sitting right here. I just noticed it. He's one of those little things I kept right here. So he's right there. You gave it to me a couple
Did a
years ago.
double job. That's cool.
Rubber chicken is still sitting there looking at me. We talk all the time, him and I, when, you know,
I think we're cursed.
everybody else is like, what the heck?
Mike's giving those chickens to everyone.
Oh, I love that. I thought it was adorable and so small. You can carry him around with you. And
It's hysterical. Yeah.
when you
Said
have
the
a,
last
when you have a
1,000
conversation.
in captivity.
No, it's not a meeting if we don't have at least 3 chicken references in the night.
Yes.
So do you guys have any other questions? I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for a decade and I have no idea what you guys want to know, but I'm an open book. You're welcome to reach out to me if you have other questions or
I think
whatever.
we're going
But
to have you back again to talk more about stuff like this because you have a lot to share.
there's a lot, we've done all kinds of investigations. I was hoping that maybe someday I would talk about pre-show and hot reading, and Mark and I had the most, oh my God, his act was so much fun at the Magic Castle because of all the hot reading we used to do. I was always the person who did the hot reading, and he was the one who found a way of bringing it through in his act. It was when you go to the Magic Castle, I'm trying to say, Wendy's been to one of his things. Haven't you been to one of his shows at the castle?
Yeah,
been there.
I wanted to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to comment. I met Mark Edward, in a skeptics group.
Oh yeah, that's yes. Tell that story, Wendy.
Well, it was just this, was more like a social club, but it was called the,
it was the IIG.
IIG, yeah, Independent Investigations Group, which was kind of we were supposed to conduct investigations of claims of the paranormal wherever we found them in society. But it also included magicians and mentalists, and that included Mark. And Mark brought Susan when they started dating. And there were other magicians that were involved in this group of skeptics and secularists in Los Angeles. And one of the things that I wanted to relate to this group was, I don't know if Susan remembers the party exactly the same way. There was a party and Mark had a little table set up and he was going to be telling fortunes. And at the time, my mom was still living and she was becoming more and more disabled. And I had taken on a lot of the responsibility for taking care of her. I have a sister and a brother and a daughter, but I was between jobs. And so it kind of fell on me to put a lot of time into it. And I thought I was losing my mind. And it was so stressful. Mm-hmm. And so Mark knew me. So at the party, I thought, oh, heck, I'll just participate with his fortune telling thing that he was doing that evening. And he knew what I was upset about because he knew me, because we were friends. And so it was not exactly hot reading, but it was, he did as part of his presentation, like when it was my turn to sit with him at his table, was that he said to me, there was like a bunch of pattern bullshit, but the message that he conveyed was that whatever was stressing me out, I would be equal to it. That I would, that it wouldn't overwhelm me, that I would be able to handle it. And do you know, it was like therapy. He was he was giving me comfort without lying to me. And I can have respect. I know a lot of magicians, and I have respect for the art. And and I feel like people want to hear something that's going to comfort them. And I think that the ethical responsibility in, as an observer, not actually one of you, is um to give people comfort or entertainment and stop short of being taking advantage of other people's sorrow.
Well said, Wendy. I remember that event very well. I remember that you came up to me afterwards. That was years ago, and you said, "Wow, that was just, it made you feel so much better because you were seen." And that's the thing about the psychic world is these people are spending quality time most of the time with them, and it's like a friendship to some extent. It's not an equal friendship, but these people are it's just a way of getting a hook on him. I remember Mark used to go to what was that down in LA? They had a haunted hayride. And
At
when I say
Griffith
haunted,
Park.
yeah, Griffith Park. And I used to go in and hang out with him. But I remember when he was doing readings, he'd do tarot. And I remember one time it was a season I wasn't able to go down there when he was doing it, and they had different psychics in this big tent. And there was a woman in there, and I'm not going to talk about what her ethnicity is, but think of typical psychic kind of thing. You can have that image in your mind. And her husband was outside, and he was like, "Come on over here, come over here, come into my way, come on into the tent." And he'd come into, and and Mark was watching these people for several nights in a row because he was doing this haunted hayride. And she would come down and she'd be like, she'd do a reading, a tarot reading, and then she would immediately say, she'd push a piece of paper and a pencil to him. There's something else, and it's dark. Put your name and your phone number on here. I'm going to go home and I'm going to pray on it. And then I'm going to contact you later. And so, and that's what was going on. It was a huge, what's the word for it? It was a grift, but it was like a
Casing.
hard sell. Hard sell. What'd you say?
Hard no.
Casing.
Casing, yeah. Well, it was a hard sell. And so people, whether they put their real phone number or not on there, I don't know. But they ended up, I think Mark and other people complained and they got rid of these people. But Mark was always fascinated by this stuff. So he was really watching and like, wow, check it out how they're doing this. And
Yeah.
that's fascinating. And he's watching how they are, and it's that world I was talking about that Bob Nygaard deals with, which is the people who have those shops that are the ones like the Ojo and the the eggs that have trading out the money and the lottery scams. I live in an area that's hugely Hispanic, so here there's these
Oh yeah.
lotteria scams. Yeah, the lotteria
Loteria.
Lotteria, the scams and all kinds of other immigration scams where they're telling them, look, I just won this, I have this lottery ticket I just won, but I'm an illegal alien, so I need I need somebody to cash this lottery ticket for me, and I can't do it because somebody's gonna catch. And so it's a scam. You guys have heard a bunch of times, but because the population in our town isn't really aware of it so well. And then the egg, oh my gosh, that I've heard that scam so many times. But
Yeah.
it's a cultural
Yeah.
where they do that, and it's just a thing that people do because of course you take the egg, you rub it on their back, you crack it, and it's got all this ooey stuff inside. It's just been traded out with an egg that has been altered.
Right.
Like the psychic scams with the psychic surgery and stuff that James Randi did. So
Yeah.
I got a question, Susan.
yes, Susan.
So like when I'm done readings, like obviously we get hired sorry, we get hired for entertainment.
Mhm.
And that's pretty well known. I mean, it's very upfront when we get hired. We don't really, I don't I don't know what Andrew does because we're separate when we're doing separate readings. I don't really like tout that. But I'm kind of like, well, I'm at a party and the person that hired me knows. I always keep it really, really light and keep it off of all the known topics that you should not, no health, no money. And I can't even begin to, I'm in Texas. I can't even begin to get into politics. So, but, but I've had a lot of people, I always spin things positive. But again, it's always a positive thing that I leave them with. But I don't come out and say entertainment purposes only. It's always just it's very light advice. It's very positive. And I always do say that no matter what you're hearing today, we are human beings that have choices, and the choices ultimately end up with you. So do you think that is kind of enough?
So you sounds like you're struggling with the disclaimer. And that's common. And when I first met Mark Edward and I found out, I mean, I knew of him before I met him. He was hired for a James Randi cruise in 2009, and I was single, and I knew he was going to be one of the main speakers. Him and Randy were there, and I always thought he was cute. So
He was
So cutie.
he didn't have a chance once I was like, this guy's, yeah, he's mine.
You
Dibs.
got locked in.
I really did call dibs on him, and I told all the other women that were there, I'm like, I'm having first dibs at this guy. You back off. So, and I won. Yeah, Wendy knows. And so you've known me a long time. But anyway, so when I first started really, I mean, didn't know a lot about magic or mentalism at that time. I had some problems with what he was doing because he, even to me, wouldn't say, I know it's, come out straight up. But seriously, you guys, the disclaimer is there because you are selling your if you have a business card and you're handing somebody a business card and they could go to the website and see that that you're selling your services as a magician mentalist, as a reader of some sort, and you don't have a bunch of gobbledygook on there with like angels and things flying around. Within 30 seconds of researching you, I don't care how good your reading is, if they go, oh, Susan Williams, oh my gosh, I'm going to devote my rest of my life to her. As long as they can walk away and go, yeah, you can book her, or, she's whatever. As long as they can see that, it's fine. You don't have to do for entertainment purposes only. You don't have to put any of that. It's not, when you're performing at a haunted hayride, I think it's kind of obvious that it's a hayride. Those people are chasing you around with pumpkin heads and the what is the chainsaws. They're not really chasing you around. We know that. We're, as an adult, when you buy a ticket to go to the movies and you see Harry Potter floating around in a broom, you don't really think there is a person floating around the broom. It's CGI.
It's a movie.
And it's a great green screen. And when somebody's on a play and it's Three Blind Mice or The Mouse Trap, and somebody comes in and there's this murder coming on and they lay there dead, they're not really dead. We know that as adults. Now, there are some people who have a problem differentiating between reality. Those people are there. But what you guys are doing is mentalists and palmistry and tarot. As long as there is within a minute or so somebody saying, oh, they're not real. I mean, they could find that easily. They know your name or they whatever. It's fine. You do not have to go to the extreme of, like Penn and Teller and who's some of these others. They just go into the disclaimer so much. It's just obvious. Oh, who is it that used to do it all the time? There was another mentalist. It wasn't Cassidy. It was oh, somebody, I can't think of the name all of a sudden, but he would go on, he would give the disclaimer, would go so far to the extreme. He'd be like, so I want everybody to know there's absolutely no powers here. Don't come to me and ask for lottery numbers. And he would go into this extreme that almost made you think he's protesting too much. So obviously he must be. But then people who are so ethical that like Banachek and
Who was that?
and Teller, they're coming at you and they're like, those people are slime and they're scums and there's no way that we would, and it's like, come on, you guys. We know we're at a magic show. You're a magician. No kidding. If you spend enough time in the world that I spend in these psychic worlds, what you guys are doing is mentalism is nothing like what's going on in the magic in the world. They're totally different. The people are cold reading and hot reading, and that is about the only thing you guys have in common. They're not necessarily doing billets. I mean, maybe there's some out there, but they're not doing billets. They're not doing sleight of hand. They're not doing any of that. So whenever, um, so go ahead and continue doing your art form. Don't.
So it's like basically it's not like I'm coming out in a Snow White outfit and going, "Hi, I'm Snow White. My 7 dwarves are back at the house."
Ooh, that sounds very sexy. But no, but a human, I mean, if it's a 5-year-old, you're not going to break the illusion if you're performing it. Oh, look, the princess is here, of course. But the parents know they had to pay you. I mean, of course they know you're not Cinderella. They know you're not Snow White. When you're at the Magic Castle, you're at the Magic Castle. It is a magician's venue. Everything in here is fake. Come on now. So, no, I mean, people, the most flack Mark got were from magicians.
Cool.
They did not understand. There are some black and white magicians out there that I won't name, but that are just like this. And if you ever did a reading in your entire life, you are like the worst of the worst, because how dare you not telling everybody that. It's like, dude, come on, man. Of course.
Yeah, he took a lot of heat for that.
He did. Mark did take a lot of heat, but he did.
Really?
Oh yeah. He
Oh
had
yeah, the skeptic
yeah.
crowd.
Some of them, yeah. But then that's kind of before then I got involved, and I was more like upfront about
And then you just
protecting
beat their ass. So
yeah, kind of. But the thing is that there are people who just can't see it for an art, and they can't differentiate it. They think that if anybody's left completely not
I think Wiley's
believing.
giving you the high five there.
Who is?
Wiley.
oh,
Wiley.
Wiley.
Yeah.
One of the things that and I got told this within weeks of joining Magic Club and being interested in magic and everything else. One of the things that they told us is that they said you have to understand you are one of the biggest liars in the world. Everything you do is totally fake. None of it's real.
Mhm.
And the moment that you believe that you are doing it for real is when you should sell everything and walk away.
Well, that's Nightmare Alley. Yeah, right there.
Because one of the people who told me that they added a little extra. It's kind of funny. He said we're the biggest liars in the world, along with the Saturday night entertainment at the local bar and any infomercial ever made.
Yeah, especially the Psychic Friends Network.
And Mark worked for the Psychic Friends Network.
I know.
And so that's where
Oh my God. And I was so enthralled when we met Mark.
He was one of their top psychics. He did an infomercial for him.
Ah.
And you can see it.
See how much information we
Heck
get.
yeah. Huh?
Susan, if you can, like, if we can get, I loved it when we met you and you showed us that video of Mark doing the Psychic Friends Network. I was just dying because I totally remembered that.
Yeah, he was a psychic. And so that's why some skeptics have a problem or did have a problem with him. But Mark he loved it. The hardest thing he could do. I mean, he hated doing like repetitive stage work. The magic stuff was just boring to him. The mentalism, that was interesting. Storytelling, the things, the odd things that would happen. And then whenever he met me and we added hot reading in it, oh my God, every show was completely different. And they were just so fascinating how he would take some information I gave him about somebody who I figured out was born on a Monday or something.
Right.
And Mark would weave it in somehow. Oh yeah, hell yeah. So he learned all that from being on, he was one of the top psychics and the Psychic Friend Network. In fact, but he was also on the board of Skeptic magazine at the exact same time, the Skeptic Society of LA. He was on their board and he's doing infomercials for the Psychic Network. You don't learn these tricks from reading them in a book. He got in there. He went to spiritualist, he would do readings at a spiritualist church. If you read his book, you'll see he talks about everything. But he would do readings. You got to check out his banana readings, the chapter on banana. Wendy knows what I'm talking about. But and I just shared a video of him doing a banana reading a couple days ago. It's on my Facebook page. But okay, so follow me on Facebook. But heck yeah, he loved all that. He would take something easy and make it more difficult by adding in an element of, well, let's find out what happens with this, and it was just and that's what you can do with mentalism. It doesn't have to be perfect and scripted. No, throw it to the wind, make it difficult, enjoy your life. But Mark loved, he was fascinated by all that went on. But yeah. Psychic Friends Network. And then he wrote the book, which was a tell-all. So there's the disclaimer. Mark was a psychic medium for a long time, worked in the Psychic Friends Network. Who knows what he did? But then he took all that information and he left and he walked out with it and he wrote a book. And in the same way, when I get those VIP readings from psychics, when the psychic is reading me, I stay in character. So I'm agreeing, I'm nodding my head, I'm crying, I'm doing everything. And then after the show, I'm still in character. And then people come over and we talk and we hug, and I'm in character the whole way through. So it's the same damn thing.
Wow.
People around me, they don't know that that I'm a skeptic and I'm just buying into it to see how far I can get to get the information so I can write an article. They don't know. But if I stood up and said, hey, he's a fraud, look, he's just hot reading, or that was stupid, of course none of that's real, nobody's going to listen to me. I can't affect those people who are already there. No way. They're going to throw me out and I'm going to lose all the information that I had, and it's going to ruin that psychic's day, which is really good.
Right.
But what will happen is a lot of empathy will go to the psychic, and the psychic will end up coming out of this better off because they'll be like, what's wrong with these skeptics? They're so evil. They're just slime, and they're awful human beings. And how dare they do? I won't win over anybody. The only way to have an inroad with this is to get after the enablers, who are the people who are enabling these people, the TV shows, the morning news stations, the celebrities who endorse these people.
Right.
And then the only other way to do it is to inoculate people you love and your friends and family. I give these talks all the time to schools or to different people, because if you tell them before they're in grief, if you tell them before it's a problem and you forewarn them, then when it happens to them, they'll say, I have a feeling I know where this is going. And this is kind of reminds me of a lecture I heard by this woman before, and she was talking about this. Even if it isn't psychics, it could be romance scams, it could be multi-level marketing scams. All of those are all pyramids. We don't even know what the next kind of scam might be, where they call up the grandpa or grandma on the phone and say, I'm in jail, can you send some money? Or, this is cybersecurity calling you up, and somebody has infiltrated your your bank accounts. You need to take all your money out, and I'm going to put it in cryptocurrency for you.
Right.
As soon as they do that. Yes, Grey Wolf?
No, it's happening right now with Apple. That there is a scam going on that's saying that your Apple ID has been compromised.
Oh yeah, it's I
And
probably
people are
have
falling-
2 more today. Yeah.
Yeah, that are falling for it in droves. While as sorry, Susan, everybody here knows I'm extremely ADD. I've been everything that's been said is still here, but I've been doing 4 other things at the same time.
Well, I'm playing solitaire here while I'm talking. No, I'm only kidding. And knitting at the same time. No, I'm only kidding.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm playing Royal Match, and but I got a thing
You
just
play
a few
Royal
minutes ago.
Match too? I play Royal
yeah,
Match.
I just got into it. After 4,000 levels of Family Guy, I had to find something else.
Oh, yeah.
The things that are recorded.
Yeah,
We have
but
common. People have more in common than they realize.
realize, and that's it. The social engineering that happens with that, whether you call it a hot reading, whether you call it social engineering, people are vulnerable.
Yes.
And right now, we are heading into the most vulnerable time that people are looking for. Either they're elated or they're like, oh my God, how could that have happened? And they're worried. So that they are going to be these victims because they're going to be looking for an answer that
an easy answer.
Yep. And that's it. But like I say, and it's sad that we have to put a disclaimer, okay, that if entertainment is entertainment, but the safest thing you can do is to a gentle, I have no real powers. Powers come from your mind and from the creator.
The
That's
magic
it.
books that you've read to get.
Yeah, but that's it. You know, where do my powers come from? And this is a line I used to use. All right, I do have some powers. I'll admit it. I learned as a child. There's this big brick building that has the letters LIB. I think you might be able to figure out the rest.
Right.
That's where all my powers come from. So you can gain the same powers.
Mark used to use the same thing. He'd say, people would come up to him afterwards and he would say, I read a lot. And that's where I get, no, exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that people just don't want difficult answers. You know,
we were talking about it.
And they say, how did he do that? How did that magician do that trick? And I'm like, I can't tell you because I'll ruin magic for you. They're like, no, you gotta tell me. And I'm like, it is so simple that when I tell you, you will be mad at me. So I'm not going to tell you. And it's just that easy, and
yeah. Well, these guys all know my stock
answers.
my stock answer. How did he do that? Fantastically, wonderfully. He got you thinking.
So we usually close right about now, but I wanted to close with information. So if somebody's interested in what you do or even joining you, how could they do that?
Well, I'm not putting on any necessarily stings at the moment. Okay. I do a lot of investigations. I've got a whole bunch of videos I've got to evaluate of Tyler Henry. Oh, God, we called him, Mark named him Tater Tot, Operation Tater Tot. I've been following him.
By the way, I love the names that you guys come up with.
Mark came up with all the names. He came up with all the names. Yeah. And it's actually really kind of interesting. I'll just say it really quickly is that when we started doing these different stings and operations, one of the things we wanted to do, like whenever Wendy and I were involved in these kinds of things years and years ago, back in LA. I don't live in LA.
No, we went to. No, you don't. But you came down to.
I used to come down because my boyfriend
frequently.
was in LA. So
and we went to see. What was his name? John Edward.
Oh yeah, we did a John Edward protest. That was hilarious. We got a video. Everything's videoed. We always make records of everything so we can show. But one of the things that Mark wanted to do is, we did this with Sylvia Brown too, and I showed this briefly at the Magisterium, the video clip of it, is that he would put the most egregious errors that the person had made, and then he put them on lime green paper, 4 on a sheet, and then we'd leave them in bathrooms, we'd leave them on the seats, all kinds of stuff. And then what would happen is we expected people to see this paper and go, what the hell is this? And then they Google it and they would get whatever the failure is. And then the psychic would see him walking around with this bright green paper, and the psychic knows what's on that paper because they've seen it. And so before the show, and they're wandering around with this paper, and the psychic can't come over or have the psychic's people come over and take it out of her hands.
Right.
So they'd be freaking out because they'd know that the person's wandering around and they might just Google it. But that's the reason why we created the names, the odd names we did, is because we wanted to be something that was easy to spell, something if you looked at the name, you could forget it and then you could Google it later. And then you could say, oh, what was that? Operation Pizza Roll? What the hell's that? What's Operation Tater Tot? What's Operation Peach Pit?
Dill pickle.
Dill pickle, yeah. And Bumblebee did Operation Bumblebee. We did Operation Ice Cream Cone. We've done a bunch of things, but Mark would come up with these names so that they sound stupid and ridiculous, which I liked because Matt Frazier had to say on one of the TV shows, they asked him about Operation Peach Pit right there in morning TV. And how stupid does that sound, And he's like, oh, we welcome skeptics to all our events. They come in as skeptics and they leave as, and the person had to ask him about this. But anyway, we want them to be able to, if somebody was to take in a paper or put by a billboard or something right by the venue, and it just says Operation Tater Tot, Operation Tater Tot, that's all it says. People are going to Google that and they're going to go, what the hell is that? And they're going to look it up and they're going to find all the articles I've written about Tyler Henry. And that's the genius that Mark Edward was.
Right.
And so I'll keep up doing all the operation stuff, but we had Operation Bumblebee was a problem because Bumblebee is actually a military exercise. Operation Bumblebee. There's even a Wikipedia page about it. So now I have to be more careful and select things that aren't
So
I didn't know that
a real
story.
operation from some military exercise. But so you can find me, I'm sorry, you can find, I am a nonprofit. It's called abouttimeproject.org. And that is funded by James Randi, his educational foundation years ago. And I also have a Wikipedia editing team. And so I use the money in there I use for various things. And all the investigations I do are paid for with that money. So when I go to a psychic fair or a psychic to see Matt Frazier, and I paid that $260, the money came from Randy and his organization and donors. People donate to me. So they you would think that the psychic would pick up on that money, it has some kind of bad juju, if James Randi's there, his money's there, and Susan Gerbic's there. I mean, my God, they never pick up on it for some strange reason. But you can follow me on Facebook. I'm very prolific on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Blue Sky. You can find me on Threads. You can find me on Instagram. But I really interact mostly on Facebook. And please friend me. Messenger is the easiest way to get a hold of me. At the moment, I don't have any stings going on, but the people that I usually recruit for stings are almost all women because the victims are all women.
Yeah.
And that's the person who's going to blend in the most. Somebody who looks like Wendy, she's gold. I mean, she walks in there, they're going to be all over her. There's no way anybody's going to suspect anything from somebody who looks like Wendy.
Gotcha.
Because that is perfect. But you guys walk in, you go and do a thing, they're going to be on to you like white on rice. It's just nobody's going to believe that you're there. So you have to be there partnered with a woman would be how we would have to do it because they're very apprehensive about that kind of stuff. So at the moment, I've only been doing research and stuff like that. So I do have men on my team that do research, but it is tedious and time consuming. Oh, I was trying to tell you when I left the Matt Frazier event just recently in October, I felt awful. I went back to my hotel room. I felt horrible because I felt like this is just being a sea of manipulation and just what's going on. It felt, yeah, I just, people were texting me when I got back. They're like, how'd it go? And I'm like, I'll tell you tomorrow. And they're like, no, come on. We're right down at this bar. We're in this room. We're doing this thing. We're playing this game. I'm like, no, I'm just going to go to bed early. I'm going to finish my notes. I'm going to go to bed and upload the photos I took and go to bed. And I'm a social type of person. I'm not that type of person who wants to go to bed early, but I was wiped. And when Operation Dill Pickle, 11 hours I was videos I've made.
Oh, 11 hours.
It's awful. It is, and you watch the same reading over and over and over, and you just feel like, ugh,
Yeah.
it's just going
depressing.
on. And these poor women are sitting there. Just
One question.
yes,
Could you
Dan.
please write the URL in the chat
Yes, I
if
will.
you
In
want to
fact,
follow it?
yeah. I will also screen share so you can see right now.
Okay.
What's going on with my mouse? Because I have screen share functions, but I didn't even use them, so I better use it. So in here is let me move these chat things over. So what you can see is this is abouttimeproject.org, abouttimeproject.org, abouttimeproject.org. And I have a lot of different things that I run. I am involved in a lot of different projects. Up here you can see I also run the Monterey County Skeptics in Monterey County, California, and Grief Vampires. If you go down here to Grief Vampires, you can see these are the main psychics that I've been investigating. I haven't kept this website up to date. Thomas John is the seatbelt psychic. That's the hot reader that got first got my attention that made the New York Times. Matt Fraser, Chip Coffey, Jeanette Wilson, James Von Prague, Tyler Henry. And if you go down here, here's the New York Times article. You can get the archive right here.
Okay.
And there's the archive article from the New York Times Magazine. So it hit the magazine, which was big news. 2019 is when it hit, but I did the investigation, I think in 2017. But this is the artwork they used for that. But we have had, it's been hard. I haven't really been doing a lot of different stings and things like that, because what's happening is it's hard to get the media to take it seriously. And now there's so much information, like Gray Wolf had said, there's so much misinformation going on out there. We spent it's just almost like a wave, like a tsunami, and just trying to fight back on it. And psychics are not my only area. I spend time doing a lot of other things, and people around me do a lot of other things. We're trying to really fight back. And Randy used to call it unsinkable rubber ducks. And
Not to be confused with rubber chicken.
rubber chickens. Yeah, my rubber chicken. But Randy was frustrated, and he was somebody who could get a press conference and all the amazing things that he did with Peter Popoff and psychic the psychic surgery and all the homeopathy, all the things he did. And you know what? He did make a dent in it. And I'm hoping that Mark Edward and I will make a dent in this. I know we're making these psychics uncomfortable. And I know that one psychic at least has already lost his ability to use PayPal for his readings.
Right.
And I know that there's some people who are not getting TV shows, probably because we flooded the internet with articles about their lives. But we can't know exactly if we really are having a serious impact. We can't know. We're not going to end this. People always are going to go to some scam, if not psychics. But I know that if we didn't do this, and if Randy hadn't done what he did, and if Houdini hadn't done what he did, what kind of world would we be living in now if people didn't step forward and try to fight back? But yeah, I think I feel like I'm keep my sanity by feeling like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
And educating people. And it's really nice to be able to speak to the mentalism community. You guys have been just amazing. Mark didn't come to any mentalism conferences until he was asked by Andrew and Susan to come to Magisterium. That's the first one he's been to in 10 years or more, 20 years. And it was a really nice of you guys. He thought that the mentalism community was mad at him because he got so much flack from the magic community. And he only started performing at the Magic Castle in the last 5 or 6 years, after being there for 13 years as one of the lead seance people and in the Houdini seance room.
I'm
But
glad. I'm
you guys
honored.
have been great. I mean, I had no idea you would accept me. When I came to the magisterium, I sat in the back and I just was like the shy little girlfriend that was just here to take your money when you came over my table. I
And
did
when we talked
absolutely.
yesterday,
Mhm.
I was like, okay, how much should we talk about now? What's going on with us next year? But we did tell you that we're doing another convention this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you are definitely the very first person we asked to
that
come
is just
back.
such an honor. I'm just shocked.
We're
You know,
honored.
make sure I had my schedule clear.
Yeah.
I will be there. As far as I know, I'm not psychic, but I neither are they, and neither are they.
Well played, well
But
played.
you know, that's a long time from now. But gosh, you guys, it feels really good to be in the mentalist community and so welcoming you guys have been. I oh, and I have my little pin right here that has from the um has the little emblem mark on it.
Mhm.
I from 2024. I tell you, it meant a lot to Mark to be honored by his peers. That was one of the most important things to him. And when you guys had the wand breaking ceremony for him, that meant a lot to myself and to my son Sterling, who was there. It really did. It was very, very cathartic, and the outpouring of love and respect was tremendous, and I really do appreciate it. And I'm glad we're recording this so other people can hear who watch this if they stay this long into the video.
It was an honor
It was.
Yeah,
to
we
be
felt
able to
very
do that.
honored.
Yep.
And the what Terry Tyson made for him, I took that to the conference in Vegas, and I have shown it to so many people, and I'm like, you can hold this and touch it. And I mean, I'm just like overwhelmed with this arrow, the arrow tip for
Did
Mark's
an
son.
amazing job on that wand and Larry's wand too.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's it was a big deal. It really was, and I really appreciate it. And protecting mentalism, protecting this world you guys are in is important to me, and you have my full support.
Well, for one, I can only speak for myself. Thank you for doing what you do.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
I'm only able to do this because of people who are around me. I'm certainly not the magic. I'm not the James Randi here. I'm just I'm like one of his little toes or something that's trying to
You're
do
the
this.
conduit.
I'm trying hard. Let me tell you, I spend a lot of time on site. Oh, and I have a channel too. Let me show you. If you guys want to see, hold on, wait. If you want to see what we do, what I do, and if you like this stuff about the psychics, you got to go to my YouTube channel. At least subscribe. Here, let me. Welcome to Psychic.
I have.
You are on it. Okay,
Yeah,
so
everything.
Susan is kind of the kind of person I could use in a sting. So, you know.
And I was actually going to call you after to be asked to be
Oh,
used in this.
yeah. If I do something in the Texas area, or if I do something for TV or something like that, maybe you'll be one of the people I use. I have a sting all set up. It's called Operation Lima Bean. It's hold on, I'll tell you in a second. But this is my YouTube channel. It's called Psychics Explained. Or you could call it Psychic Sex SEX Planed.
Oh,
Either
wow.
way, it's the same website. Psychics Explained.
I love that.
You could take the S off and put a space right there, and it's SCX planed.
Right.
And so this is videos that I do that get into the weeds. I have tons of videos in here of what we're doing. But yeah, I have a sting Mark and I worked on for a very long time. It's called Operation Lima Bean. And it's we're not going to put it on until it's all done. I mean, we've had it for a long time, but I'm only doing it when I have a TV, either a TV show or an actual reporter like the New York Times that's watching me do it and filling and it's a guaranteed article because I'm not going to waste it. It's an expensive sting, and it is involved, and it is once we do this kind of sting,
Mhm.
it's going to really harm a lot of other psychics, and they're not going to do the way they do stuff. So I think it'll have an impact on the psychic world. I think anybody who's paying attention is going to absolutely have to change their way of doing things or not do things the way they do. I think it'll have a big impact. But I'm holding it until I have the opportunity. I mean, I've been approached by like Inside Edition and some of those others. They want to do like a 5-minute thing, and I'm like, no, I'm not wasting this on this. It is, you give me 30 minutes at least, and I'm not doing it until we have it. So I'm just holding out until I get a really good offer. And I thought I had one and it fell through, and then now I'm waiting. So
We'll wait for the big gun.
I'm waiting
It'll
for
come.
the big guns. I'm tired of this.
I'll make a prediction right now. It's coming. It's coming.
Oh, okay. Can you tell me when? And maybe I had a journalist reach out to me just today, and I told her to be on this call, but I guess she didn't make it.
Oh.
But you never know. You know, you talk to these journalists, you talk to people, and some of it goes in one ear and out the other, and they're like, so let's talk to some psychics that are real. And you're like, are you listening to me at all? Or they're like, oh, but you know, there's good stuff. I'm sure they do. They want to play both sides. And and Mark Edward and I had a pact. And I don't believe in hauntings, but he would come back and haunt me if I break that pact. And the pact is we're not doing any TV or anything that has that shows both sides. We're done with that. There's enough paranormal shows out there that show
Both sides, yeah.
or they give so much weight to the psychic, and then the skeptic gets like a sentence. I've done, I think, a Washington Post or another New York Times couple. I've done other articles, and I get like down at the bottom of the article, oh, and here's the skeptic and what they think, and it's like 4 sentences, and you're like,
Right.
oh, thanks, you just promoted the psychic in the whole beginning of it, and they're probably getting calls and readings and all that stuff, and then down at the very bottom it says, oh, according to the psychic buster Susan Gerbic, blah 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 blah, she calls them grief vampires. And it's like, thanks for nothing.
Right.
But they interview you for 2 hours on the phone or whatever. I'm telling you, we're in the wrong business, you guys.
We don't want to take up too much more of your time, and I do hope you come back. I really do.
I'm right here, you guys. I'm right there. I'm
Right.
happy to.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you're coming back, and you're coming back for the con next year, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's Randy right there. See him right there. And there's Ray Hyman, and there's Nosferatu, and on this side it's Mark, and there's Randy, the Randy doll. I'm a big fan of Randy. I miss Randy and I miss Mark so much.
Yeah.
But being at least slightly in your world, it makes me feel so much better. It feels good. Like, you know.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Say goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for letting me
Thank you,
attend.
Susan.
Susan.
Thank
Right.
you.